All right, welcome. I am calling the Monday, October 7th, 2024 Parks and Natural Resources Commission meeting to order. Here at 6:30, Chairwoman is running late, so I will continue or kick us off and get us rolling here. Tonight's Parks and Natural Resources Commission meeting will be held in person and virtually by using Zoom as chair, or acting chair, I should say. I will be leading the Parks and Natural Resources Commission meeting, and the public is welcome to participate when invited throughout the meeting. Members of the public may attend the meeting in person or join via online Zoom. If attendees experience audio problems, we suggest you to leave the meeting and then rejoin. This usually fixes the issue. Additional instructions on how to participate are posted online at burnsvillemn.gov in the public meeting calendar. As usual, tonight's meeting is available for viewing on BCTV and on the city's website. If you're unable to participate this evening and would like to submit public testimony, I encourage you to email your comments to city staff or mail your comments directly to City Hall. You may also call into the meeting at 651-372-8299. For each public hearing, I will open up a time when callers may speak to that item, and we'll give more instructions at that time. Your call will be muted until the appropriate time as well. Please note there may be a slight delay due to differences in technology. If speaking by phone, please mute your computer since there may be a bit of a delay. All right, on to the agenda. The first item of the Parks and Natural Resources Commission meeting tonight is adoption of the agenda. Do any members of the commission have any changes to the agenda? All right. Staff, do you have any additional changes to the agenda?
Nothing from staff.
All right, may I have a motion for adoption of the agenda?
I'll move.
And is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? All right. That motion is passed. All right, we're going to move on to number 2, approval of the minutes. Commissioners, are there any changes to the minutes? All right, staff, are there any changes?
Yeah, nothing from staff.
All right. May I have a motion to approve the minutes?
I motion to approve the minutes.
Is there a second?
Second.
Are there, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, that motion passed. All right, item number 3. At this time, are there any members of the public on the Zoom meeting who wish to speak?
I'm not seeing anybody.
Okay, we will move on then. Let's go to item number 4. I would like to invite Caleb Ashling up for the Natural Resources Specialist for the Habitat Restoration Program update.
All right, thank you for having me tonight, Commissioners. As mentioned, my name is Caleb Ashling. I'm a Natural Resources Specialist with the City of Burnsville, and I'm here tonight to give the Habitat Restoration Program update. And just a little bit of an overview of what I plan on talking about tonight. My understanding is that Commissioners during the yearly planning session had requested some updates on some different projects that we've been working on, like our work out at Terrace Oaks Park and Alamagnet Park. So we've merged a number of those different requests into this general update. So I'll be talking a little quick overview about our Natural Resources Master Plan, talk about the restoration projects that have been done or are upcoming at Terrace Oaks Park and Alamagnet Park. Talk a little bit about the turf to prairie conversion work that the city has been doing and some community engagement work, and then hit on some trends in natural resources. So just a quick overview. The habitat management work that the city does in our park system is driven by the city's Natural Resources Master Plan. That was originally created in 1999, but was updated, reviewed by commissioners, and passed by City Council in 2022. And the general goal of that plan is to improve wildlife habitat, increase native plants in our park system, and enhance our natural areas for park user experience. And a key component of the restoration work that we're doing is using an ecosystem approach. So we try to restore natural ecosystem processes to help ecosystems function better. So in a lake setting, that could be reducing phosphorus pollution, which clears the water, and then we can work on restoring native plant communities. In some of our upland habitats, that might be reintroducing historical disturbance regimes that maintained habitats, like in this photo, control fire. Which is an important disturbance regime for prairies and savanna habitats. So we work on trying to restore those ecosystem processes that help maintain the habitat before we focus on more intensive mechanical work or chemical applications. So under the Natural Resources Master Plan, we have parks identified as priority natural areas. There's 21 priority natural areas in the plan. 10 of those are considered Tier 1 parks. Those are primarily our larger parks like Terrace Oaks Park, or Rudy Creamer Nature Preserve, Sunset Pond. And those parks receive more focused efforts for larger grant-funded ecological restoration projects. Then we have 11 Tier 2 parks. The Tier 2 parks are also on the list, but would more likely receive opportunistic restoration work or work that's driven by volunteer efforts. And just to cover a couple of goals that are within the plan, one really big one is ecological restoration goals. So the plan sets a goal of restoring 100 acres or 100 additional acres of parkland by 2032. Then also has a goal of reducing low-use turfgrass areas to native plantings. Then on the education and engagement side of things, the plan also directs continuing workshops, public tours, and events. Then it also puts a focus more on group volunteer events to help engage the community with the natural resources work that the city is doing. So just kind of a update on where we're at with our acres of restoration. So we have 280 restored acres or actively managed acres currently in the park system. And 32 of those acres are accounted towards that 100-acre goal, so have occurred since 2022 when we adopted or updated our plan. So we're about a third of our way through our 100-acre goal. We have quite a bit of work to do, but we have until 2032 to accomplish it. So we're making progress, but we have some work still left to do. And then, so I'll highlight some past work here and one of our bigger restoration projects, which is at Terrace Oaks Park in East Central Burnsville. So we have over 70 acres that have been restored at this park so far. It's a really nice mixture of prairie, savanna, and woodland habitat with some wetlands mixed in there as well. And as you can see on the map here, we have an area in the northwest corner of the park that was initiated in 2015. That's 19 acres. In 2018, we took on another section, which was 26 acres. And then in 2022, we took on 22 more acres of restoration, which abuts the east entrance to the park. So in total, we have over 70 acres, as mentioned, which covers about the northern third of the park and is all connected across all those units. And we still have grant funding to work on that 2022 project. So we'll have grant funding through the state's Conservation Partner Legacy Program that runs through 2026. So we're going to continue working on finishing up and using up the grant funding to get that project in a good place. And then our focus for Terrace Oaks Park for the immediate future will be to work on maintaining the existing projects that we have shown here. We do envision eventually doing additional restoration, but we've undertaken quite a bit of acreage here so far, so we want to focus on making sure that we can do a good job of maintaining these existing areas and see where we're at after a few years before working on any new restoration areas. And then I just wanted to give you a little more of a visual of what kind of that work at Terrace Oaks Park, which mirrors some of the work that we're doing in other parks as well, what that kind of looks like. So at Terrace Oaks, some of the goals of our restoration have been, well, I guess I'll start by saying the photo here kind of shows a typical example of what a lot of our parks look like if they aren't under active management. So in this photo you can see some beautiful larger oak trees that are mixed in there, but they're crowded out or becoming crowded out by a lot of common buckthorn, which is an invasive shrub species. The canopy is also really closed off by other native but sometimes weedier trees like box elders. And there's not a lot of diversity of native species here. And the oaks here, you can kind of see some of their lower limbs are already dying. They're not in a very healthy state. And we don't see a lot of young oaks coming back in this environment because there's not enough sunlight to encourage young oak tree growth because they need a lot of sun to grow. So kind of on the flip side of that, our goals for projects like this are to increase native plant diversity. We want to improve the wildlife habitat. So there's not a lot of flowers in this type of environment for pollinators. There's not a diversity of berry producing shrubs for birds. So in general we want to try to increase plant diversity which helps wildlife habitat. We want to increase oak regeneration, so encourage those young oak saplings to grow so we can replace our older trees as they die, and in general improve the health of existing oak trees, and then have a sustainable plan for managing those restored habitats. So this is looking at that most recent project that we've done, so these are some photos of that work. The restoration process that we've used at that project and in general at Terrace Oaks Park involves working in the winter to open those prairie or savanna areas up that we know historically were a lot more open. We work with, the picture on the left here is called a feller buncher. It's almost a logging style equipment that's really efficient at cutting buckthorn and thinning tree canopy. So they go in the winter when the ground is frozen and it minimizes disturbance. They can cut the invasive species and thin trees, stack those in piles. They get hauled to a main staging area, which you see on the right photo here. Then that's all fed through a chipper and loaded into semi-trucks and removed from the site. And across all three projects that have been done so far, there have been 91 semi-loads of wood chips removed from the site. That's about 11,000 cubic yards. So just a lot of material to open those areas back up to more savanna or open wood type environment. And then, of course, once we open those areas up, there is going to be a lot of follow-up control for buckthorn. So we do a lot of follow-up control for smaller buckthorn saplings. But the strategy we use is to try to put grass seed down right away to provide some good competition and fuel for fire. And then later we'll also seed wildflowers after we have more of the buckthorn under control. Flatter areas, we work with contractors who have equipment to seed those areas quickly and efficiently. You can see a photo of that on the left. Then on the right-hand side, some steeper areas or areas that are harder to access. We've worked with a variety of volunteer groups to seed those areas by hand, which are always fun projects. This is a group from Burnsville High School. We've also worked with School of Environmental Studies in Apple Valley on some of those projects as well. Then lastly, a big part of our sustainable management plan is the use of fire, which historically was a big part of maintaining open environments like prairie, savanna, or oak woodland. And so we have to establish that understory of grasses and wildflowers, which provides a nice fuel layer for using those controlled burns to maintain those habitats. And those habitats are typically burned every 2 to 6 years, depending on the goals for the site. And this is just a before and after photo of the Terrace Oaks Park project. So you can see kind of the initial state here, a tree on the left-hand side, but just really, really dense. That's mostly just buckthorn growth in the understory or the mid-canopy. This is an after photo. That tree that was on the left moved to the right. Wasn't perfectly aligned here. But you can see that it really has changed the area, the character of the park, as well as the habitat. Now we see a lot of sun coming into these areas. There's starting to be that understory layer of grasses, and the wildflowers are coming in as well, which provides that fuel that we can periodically do those controlled burns that help us maintain these areas long-term in a sustainable way. So that's just an update on the work that's going on at Terrace Oaks Park. But as far as upcoming projects, a major upcoming project is at Alamagnet Park. This is a project that commissioners may have heard of previously because it was originally planned for last winter. But as you saw, we used some pretty big equipment for these projects, and we did not have good frozen ground conditions last winter. So this work had to be forwarded to this upcoming winter. But at Alamagnet Park, we have about 40 actively managed acres currently, so previously restored land. Then we're going to work on a new 12-acre woodland and savanna expansion project in the southwest section of the park. It's adjacent to the prairie that's along County Road 11, and then some woodland restoration sites that are just to the east of that, about 20 acres on that south side. So we'll, again, kind of connect all these restored units in the park here. To fund this effort, the city is working with a new county initiative called the City-County Conservation Collaborative, the 4C program. And we have about $260,000 to work on this particular project, but some of those funds are also going to enhancing some of our previous restoration work through 2028. Then I mentioned earlier that one of the goals of our plan is converting low-use turf areas to native habitat where feasible. And we've been working with our Parks and Rec staff on that for a number of years now. And since 2020, there have been 10 acres of turf that have been converted to mostly prairie habitat. And that has happened at Interlochen Park, Highland View Park, North River Hills Park, Lake Park, and Crystal West Park. And you can kind of see on the bottom left here, we removed the turf grass, seed native plants, and then on the right here you can see that planting starting to establish. That's at North River Hills Park. This is a really cool large flowered beard tongue here that's blooming and really popular with bumblebees. So those projects are still establishing, and more native flowers are blooming all the time in those plantings. But this work really helps in a couple different ways. One, for those low-use turf-type areas, it can reduce maintenance, so there's less mowing or spraying of dandelions or fertilizing. So it can reduce a lot of those intensive inputs, but then also provide environmental benefits. So we're providing habitat for pollinators. This habitat infiltrates more stormwater from all the deep roots of all the plants. And in general also provides another type of amenity for park users in many of these parks, where they can watch wildlife or take photos of flowers and enjoy the plantings. We didn't have any major expansions or turf to prairie conversion projects this year. We had a 2-acre area where a damaged picnic shelter was removed at North River Hills and wasn't going back into turf grass, so we seeded that 0.2 of an acre area with our staff, which is what these photos are showing. So not any big new projects this year, but this was a fun small one that we did. And as I mentioned, another goal of our Natural Resources Master Plan is community engagement, and we focused on trying to do more group volunteer opportunities. So our plan sets a goal of at least 8 of those events per year. We've been able to achieve that so far every year. We typically, so what most of those are some garlic mustard pulling events in the spring. Garlic mustard is an invasive species. We do some seed collections in the fall in some of our existing habitats. So we're collecting native plant seed, which we can then use in other restoration areas. And then we've also been doing a wildflower planting project in some of these new turf to prairie conversion areas to invite folks to come learn more about the project and help us plant flowers into it. So since I'm here, I'll just give a quick plug on those events. So we've already had 2 seed collections, but we do have one coming up this Wednesday, October 9th, from 5 to 6:30 here at Civic Center Park. And then our wildflower planting at one of our recent turf to prairie conversions at Interlochen Park will be happening on Saturday, October 19th from 9 to 11 a.m. And then we have a link here. You can see where to register for those events. And then just had a quick slide on habitat management trends. So there's probably a number of different ways that you could go with this. But the trends that I've been noticing, one, like a lot of different areas, we've seen pretty significant inflationary cost increases in doing habitat management work. So it is getting more expensive, and we'll have to be careful with how we expand our new restoration areas to make sure we're able to still maintain those existing restoration sites that we've already undertaken. Then we've seen quite a few weather extremes. So really dry September, pretty wet spring and summer, winters that are very little snow cover, high snow cover winters, multiple years of drought. And that can provide some challenges. You're trying to seed a new prairie planting and then you get 1 or 2 years of drought. Can impact those plantings as well. So that's another variable that's hard to plan for, but something that we just have to try to be adaptable for and manage as best we can. And then we continue to see new invasive species threats popping up. So there's always kind of another plant that's on the horizon, might move into this area, and we have to just be on the lookout for those. And the one I have pictured here is called wild parsnip. This is one, it's actually been around for quite a long time, but we're seeing it more frequently showing up in Burnsville in the past few years. It has a poison ivy-like quality, can cause burns and rashes if you come into contact with the flowers especially, or the sap. So it's a non-native invasive species with some human impacts as well. So plants like that we have to monitor for and try to control whenever they pop up. But just in general, a lot of these trends kind of can go back to the city's ecosystem approach. We want to try to be creating resilient ecosystems with high native plant diversity that can handle weather fluctuations. So if it's a dry year, there's native plants there that can thrive. If it's a wetter year, there's diversity of native plants that can handle those types of years. And these high diversity systems, healthy systems, are more resilient to invasion by native plants. So that helps reduce our concern with invasive species. And then having that sustainable management plan, a big part of our plan includes those fires, can help reduce the long-term maintenance costs of these habitats. Yeah, and with that, I would thank you for your time and be happy to take any questions.
Any questions from commissioners? Thank you, Caleb. That was good.
I can get us started. Well, on behalf of the River Hills community, I just want to say thank you. The transformation that we've been able to see just in these last couple of years is beautiful. So I just want to give you that moment. I am super excited to hear about the ecological approach, or if I said that right, but prioritizing restoration first. And also excited by community engagement. My question is, in that community engagement, have there been any intentional outreach to like the local Native communities here in Burnsville or in the area as a way to help restore, help inform this restoration process?
Yeah, we've done quite a bit of community engagement in general. I wouldn't say we've had community engagement specifically with the Native community here, but we have done a lot of engagement in general when we're going through our natural resources master plan process to invite the community to comment and be part of that process. Then when we're doing any new projects, we also reach out to the surrounding community to get comments on those new projects. But no, we haven't done any specific engagement, but I think that's a great idea and something that we could consider.
Thank you.
You mentioned that, especially at Terrace Oaks, which is great, by the way, to finally get rid of some of the buckthorn and the hugely dense foliage. But you mentioned like there's, I don't know if you mentioned significant, but there's upkeep. Well, like, what is the upkeep? Because it's supposed to be, it sounds kind of counterintuitive. It's supposed to be a natural habitat, so it should grow naturally, but yet there's still upkeep. Does that include continued controlled burns? What does that include exactly?
Yeah, the biggest one is controlled burns. So prairie and savanna habitat was really maintained long-term or historically by periodic fires or fires set by Native Americans. And so to maintain that habitat, it needs those periodic fires that come through, set back some of those unwanted woody species, and helps that grass and flower understory flourish. So it does take that ongoing maintenance, but that does help us, keep those native plant diversities and keep the invasive species at bay. So the periodic burns are the biggest one, but in the short term, we also will go in. The first, I'd say, 10 or so years of a restoration project is more maintenance, and it takes maybe 10 years for these projects to get really fully established. So we'll go in and do more spot cutting of buckthorn that may have been missed previously. If there's areas where there's been more, say, Canada thistle that we've had to remove, we might do some spot seeding. So those are the types of kind of, controlled burns is kind of the major component, but sort of spot control of other invasive species issues that are popping up in those areas.
What do you have any idea of a time frame it would take to completely restore Alley Magnet and Terrace Oaks and some of the bigger parks to the savanna? Because I know that the idea was additional 100 acres, which some of that you've done between now and 2032, but like there's obviously more than 100 acres left to go.
Yes. Yeah, I can't say I could really give you a timeline on restoring those entire parks. And with our natural resources master plan, we're conscious of the fact that some people may, Terrace Oaks may be their favorite park, but there's other folks that would like to see restoration work at other parks that I haven't talked about, like Kelleher Park or Rudy Kramer Nature Preserve. So we are working on a number of different sites, which means that restoring an entire park is going to take quite a bit of time. But we can still have really valuable wildlife habitat, really improve park user experience, even if the entire park isn't restored all at once. So it's definitely it's a long-term effort for sure.
Any other questions from commissioners?
I have one more. So, and you may have mentioned this before while I was scribbling down some notes, but out of the 21 priority areas, there's 10 that are top or tier 1, 11 tier 2. My question is, how are they differentiated, or like what is the process? What makes one a tier 1 versus tier 2?
Yeah, when we were going through our natural resources master plan, there was some different analysis of those sites that helped us make that determination. One was public feedback. We had a survey that gauged use of those different parks, so which are some of the higher used parks where people are going to be able to observe and see the work that's being done or enjoy it the most. Size, so in general, for wildlife purposes, sometimes larger tracts of land is going to be more beneficial to different species. So A larger size park is more likely to be tier 1. If it was adjacent to a priority water body, was also a factor in that calculation. And then also trail systems. So if there's a more significant trail system where there's a lot of public use, those are some of the major factors that I remember from that prioritization system that we had.
All right, Caleb, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
All right, thanks for having me.
All right, on to agenda item number 5. This is with Garrett Beck, Parks and Recreation and Facilities Director.
All right, good evening, Commissioners.
Good evening.
Thank you for having me this evening. I'm looking forward to sharing about our parks plan that we've been working on for, it took about 9 months to complete. So, quick background, in December of 2022, Council directed staff to engage our community to survey and connect with our community, specifically underserved populations, to make sure that they have a voice in how we manage our park system. Our Parks Master Plan had last been updated in 2017, and we did do a good job of trying to connect with our community at that time. There were things going on, some out of our control, that impacted our ability to connect with the entire community. And so, because so many things had changed just in the world in general from 2017 to 2024, it was a great opportunity to go at it again. So our goal was to really reflect as close as possible that roughly 60-40% population of white and BIPOC community. So prior to that, we had probably been about an 80-20 when we did the 2017 plan. So a little history: the majority of our park system infrastructure was put into place in the 1980s and 1990s. As I mentioned, we did the 2017 plan, and we had also done 2 other parks plans prior to that. And so each time we do this, the goal is really to make sure that we hear the voice of the community, and that we're able to keep our park system relevant for what the needs are of the community going forward into the future. So the parks plan was really 2 main parts. It was doing that community engagement piece, but it was also understanding our infrastructure. And I'll talk a little bit later about where our focus had been on our infrastructure up until this point, and how we really amplified that to really understand everything, and I mean everything, that is out in our park system. So, and then with that information, that really helps us to plan into the future on how we maintain the park system, if there's new things we need to be including and things like that. So an engagement overview, I mentioned that in 2017 we had some pretty strong efforts to engage with our entire community, but you can see here that we had dialogues with over 2,600 people, and we had a 236% increase in that engagement overall. We did hit that 60-40 percentage by being intentional with connecting with our residents, and I'll be able to share about some of the different methods that we did this time around. And a lot of that was through, you can see we had a lot of in-person conversations, and just trying to use a variety of ways so people could connect with us on the website. They could be in person, they can do emails, things like that. So again, our engagement methods, we had surveys online, we did in-person gatherings, and then we did targeted in-person independent groups. So Burnsville has a billboard. We actually advertised the fact that we were doing a Parks Plan update on our billboard on 35W, so some residents may be able to have seen it that way. We had signs out at in our parks that had QR codes and that advertised we had this going on. The city has a variety of festivals that we host and that we partner with other groups. And so we had a presence, staff and our consultants were out there. And then some of those independent gatherings. We were invited into Gateway STEM Academy, which is over by Oak Leaf West. The schools let us into their facilities as well, and so we were able to connect with high school students, junior high students, and things like that. So just a lot of different new things that we were able to do that we weren't able to do the last time. So the engagement tools, again, shared a little bit about what those were, but here's an example of one of the things that we had online where people could just go in and click a park that they wanted to comment on. They could share that there was something in the park that they didn't like, something in the park that they did like. The purple one is like an idea of, hey, I'd like to see this there or whatever. So basically that was up during the entire survey time, and we just collected all those comments and feedback and created lists of all that information. We asked a variety of questions. This is just one example about, the question was, how do you use the park system? And so these photos were representative of some of the most popular things that we heard back, but the playgrounds, beach, getting on trails for health and wellness. You see our festivals and events popped up quite a bit in the parks, splash pads, the dog park, and then our facilities, the golf course and the ice center are just a few of them. And then park locations, we asked people what are their favorite parks to visit, and so the more a park was selected, the bigger the circle got. So some of the most popular ones were Terrace Oaks and Sunset Pond, Red Oak, Crystal Lake, Cliff End. Again, all of those parks offer a variety of different experiences that are different from each other as well. So you can kind of see, you know, if you want to be out hiking in nature, Terrace Oaks might be your place of choice. But if you want to go to a beach, you're going to Crystal Beach. Sunset Pond has more of a hard trail walking path. Red Oak has a bunch of different amenities with pickleball and our inclusive playground and things like that. So lots of different draws to people for different reasons, which is nice to have a diverse park system that provides those types of opportunities. So at the end of the day, our consultant put together the main themes that we heard. People believe our parks are clean, that they're safe, and they provide a variety of options that meet their needs. From what we need to work on, they want us to pay more attention to our sport courts. They have an interest in us adding more permanent restroom facilities, and then they'd like us to take care of replacing our playgrounds and work on trail connectivity. And then the favorite amenities, as we saw in that previous slide, the trails and playgrounds, natural areas, sports facilities, splash pads, and shelters. So that was the bulk of, you know, we did get some new information, but that wasn't revolutionary from what our 2017 plan was. There was a lot of alignment between what we heard then and what we heard now. So that was a good thing. Not only did it not change dramatically, but we were able to do a much better job of connecting with our entire community and being able to validate that as well. So the park inventory process, again, this was really about trying to understand everything that we have in our park system. Just real quick, our system at a glance, we have 76 parks with over 1,700 acres. 21 of those are community parks, 27 neighborhood parks, 19 mini parks, and then we have 9 natural areas that don't have any type of asset in it. It's just what it says, it's natural. So one of the things that we needed to figure out was, how do we collect this? How do we store it? How do we maintain it? And one of our goals was to use, if possible, an existing system. So we've got some great people here on staff where we have folks who work with GIS. Up to before we started this, we had GIS identified 1,500 assets that we could look at online and basically see where they're at, have a photo of them, things like that. And most of those things were the main things that you would think of in a park system. So it would have been a playground, it would have been a baseball field, backstop, fencing, things like that. And when we decided that it was time to go from the main CIP type things to getting everything, we basically tripled what we had in our system, right? So how did that happen? You can see there's 130 different types of assets. We got garbage cans, we got, you know, picnic tables and benches were not in our original system because they were below the threshold that we had collected up to that point financially. A handicap parking sign or a rules sign, soccer goal, things like that. Even though those things move around, we captured all of it. So it's over 4,500 assets, over 130 different types of assets. So what we did is we had consultants go out into our park system. They would walk up to an asset, take a photo of it. It would be GIS registered at that point. They would condition rate it on what they thought the condition was in. And then that would all go live into our system. So once they had made it through and identified everything, JJ and myself and other folks in the park system, we would go into the system, pull up the asset, make sure that the replacement cost was accurate, work on identifying what year it was installed. You can imagine 40 years of park system, and some of the things are, you know, pretty obvious when they were put in. I think we were fortunate because we have a number of staff who have been here for 25 to 30 years, and they would say, oh, you know what, I worked on that project back in 1990, so I remember that within a certain period of time, right? So we did a lot of things like that, and then we also looked at the condition rating. So, you know, when our consultant, take a playground for example, they have about 20-year life expectancy. So a consultant might look at the condition and say, oh, that looks okay, I'm gonna give it a medium rating, right? With its life expectancy only up to 20 years, and maybe it was at 22 years, we have to lower that because it's reached end of life and we need to be replacing it soon. So those are the kind of things that staff did after everything got entered into the system. So I talked about the condition rating. If it was a 1, it was really something that it needs to be taken care of as soon as possible. We really don't want it out in our park system anymore, or it needs to be repaired because it's in poor condition. If it was a 2, it is showing its age and it needs to be replaced in the next 1 to 3 years. Condition 3 was, you know, it's acceptable for what it is. And then 4s and 5s were either brand new or they were still in really good shape. So this is just an overview of a pie chart. I'll get the next slide, kind of talks about the specifics of it. I'll jump to that real quick. So what we learned by going through this exercise, we have about $1.4 million of condition 1 items that we really need to be taken care of in some way or another. And that could be just replacing the item. It could be removing it because it's no longer relevant. And so it doesn't make sense to make that investment in the asset because it's just not being used anymore. Things have changed since it was put in 30 some years ago and whatever. So, or maybe it was a repair. I mean, if a sign had graffiti on it or something like that, it would have been given a 1, and maybe it just needed to be cleaned up and whatnot. So condition 2 was also the other things that we care a lot about taking care of, and we need to start planning for that. So there's about $5.8 million. And then you have this big chunk, and these 3s in a variety of timelines are going to be turning into 2s, right? So, you know, concrete might last 30 years, a playground might last 20 years, a court surface might last 5 years, right? So we have to be, you know, there's no magical number on when do all these threes become twos? It's just going to each year. We need to be aware of that and update our system accordingly and prepare for it, so. And then we have the condition 4s and 5s, so we're sitting at right around $74 million worth of assets out in our park system. So, based on the community feedback and understanding what we have out in our system now, there's a desire to replace our outdated playgrounds. We want to improve trail connectivity in both 2017 and 2024 trails. And playgrounds were both rated very highly about what the community wants to have available for them in the park system. And we have a lot of disconnect from a trail perspective out in our park system. And so there's a separate trail planning process and whatnot, but keeping that in mind as we're looking at mini master plans, which I'll talk about in the future here and whatnot. Mentioned courts, whether it's tennis courts or pickleball courts or basketball courts, if there's cracks and things like in those, it's hard to have a good experience out there. And a number of these things either need to be resurfaced or replaced. So that was a desire. We heard about signage and wayfinding, and then our older obsolete buildings and shelters. So how do we pay for all this, and what does our CIP process look like? If you look at a 5-year snapshot, which is what we try to plan for, we have about $1.5 million for CIP improvements. So there's actually two funds. There's an improvement fund, mostly funded by park dedication fees. So pretty limited on Burnsville's a developed community. When we do have new development come in, we do have an opportunity to capture park dedication fees in some of those cases. And that money really can only be used for something new or the enhancement of an item. So I shared, like, if you did a playground replacement and there wasn't a poured in place surface there before, and that was a new thing, you could do it for that. Or if you made the playground twice the size or something like that, but you couldn't just replace the playground as is without creating a different type of experience. So that money's kind of its own pocket for different things. And then we have the park renovation fees, or park renovation budget at about $2 million a year to try to tackle just taking care of what we have on the system. So our next steps, we are actively working on prioritizing based on the community's feedback, how and when we take care of these condition 1 and 2 items over the next 3 to 5 years. As I mentioned, we look at amenities before we just choose to replace them to make sure they're still relevant in the park system and that they're still being used. And then we need to conduct some future studies to complete the parks plan, and I'll jump to that slide here in a minute. But back in 2017, we started something called the Frameworks Plan, which was really about looking at these amenities at end of life. We have right now, based on community use and excess in ball fields. And so we have, I know Caleb had Interlochen as one of the parks in the previous presentation. We made a decision a couple years ago that, you know, we informed the community and whatnot that we were looking at doing this, but that ball field is without any accessible route. It was hundreds of yards away from the parking lot in Interlochen, and that it's just not, it's used by people occasionally in the neighborhood area, but it wasn't programmed, and there's other ball fields nearby. And so we made a decision to remove the red rock from that area and to let it go to turf, and that saves us from the maintenance and driving over there. And then we left the backstop because the backstop was still in decent shape, right? So kids, mom, dad, grandparents, they could still you could still go out there and play kickball. You could throw a baseball or a softball and use the backstop there, but it would be a grass turf field instead of an actual red rock ball field. So we're making those decisions as amenities reach the end of life. Does the whole thing come out? Can we keep it and still have some type of experience? and we'll continue to do that. So our future parks plan studies, we are currently, what was it, last Wednesday? We had an open house here in council chambers of 26 parks that we are visioning currently. They're kind of doing mini master plans. We identified those 26 because they have the most 1 and 2s that need to be figured out. So again, we don't want to replace a playground somewhere in the park only to look at a bigger vision and decide that was in the wrong place and we shouldn't have put it there, right? So it's a good time to look at what does the park look like right now based on when it was visioned in 1980 and 1990, and what might it look like into the future. So that's been an exciting process. Again, we have been heavily involving our community in the process. Caleb did a pitch for his stuff, so I will do a pitch that our consultant is working on getting the 26 parks. So they engaged the community. They did drawings. Those were drafts. Those were presented last Wednesday. They got more feedback at that event, and they're going to go up online on our Parks Plan page under the visioning section. And we're still taking comments for another couple weeks where folks can go in and share feedback on the parks that they use and that are in their neighborhoods and whatnot. So that's ongoing. Our Public Works Director is going to be leading an operations and maintenance study. JJ is going to be leading a recreation programming study, and then one of our other staff in recreation is going to be working on a signage and wayfinding study. So once we get all 4 of these completed, they will be brought together into the overall parks plan as one large document, providing us with the information that we need to know to manage it into the future. And with that, I will welcome any questions and comments that you might have.
Any questions, commissioners? All right, Garrett, thank you. That was super informative, and I'm impressed. And I'm also impressed at how many folks in the community you actually participated and got some comments from. 2,600 is a big number.
Yeah, I think that's one of the most important things to us, and it's one of the, at the open house, we had probably 75 to 100 people come to that. And, it was just, people were so appreciative that they had the opportunity to come and do it, right? Our biggest challenge is getting the word out, right? Like, we want to host these events. We want to go out into the park system and, we set up tents and sit out in the park system and try to catch people out in the parks. Or we try not to just have it here in the building or whatever. We try to meet people out there too. So getting that information out and getting good feedback from people just really helps us provide the system that they're looking for. So.
And you're still looking for comments. They can, if anyone watching wants to still comment over the next couple of weeks, it's just the visioning section in the Parks Plan that's on Burnsville's website?
That is correct. And I spoke to the consultant today. They were still working on getting the plans up there. So if you go there tonight, don't panic if they're not there. But I know between today and tomorrow, they were going to try to make sure they were all up there. So.
All right, cool. All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, on to number 6, which is essentially just the next meeting. The next meeting will occur on November 18th, 2024, so not the first Monday of November because of the election, so just be aware of that. Otherwise, at this time, I would like to request a call for adjournment of the October 7th, 2024 Parks and Natural Resources Commission meeting.
I motion to adjourn.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? All right, motion is passed. Meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much.